The Arrowverse has 20 seasons, each one of them having its own main villain, and each one of those villains has some sort of master plan, whether it be their goal and their motivation for the entirety of the season that leads up to the master plan at the end, or maybe some sort of master plan that just comes out of nowhere and has nothing to do with their goal throughout the season. I'm really going to count both of those things. Like, if it's a plan that doesn't come out of nowhere and it's very well developed throughout the season, or it's slightly connected to their motivation and their goals throughout the season, then I will consider that for this actual list. With that in mind, let's start the video with number 20.
You cannot win. There is no prison you can build that can contain me. There is no one on this planet of equal power that can kill me.
RHEA is all the way at the bottom of the list because her plan is basically nothing. She feels like more of a puppet for the Dark Kryptonians, and those guys actually feel more like main villains near the end of the season, despite the fact that I don't think they are. I think RHEA is the main villain. Her actual master plan is basically nothing, and it's the Dark Kryptonians that do have some sort of plan. Because of that, because of how they treated RHEA near the end, RHEA and her master plan are going to be at the bottom of this list. RHEA's master plan is to take over the Earth and create New Daxamon National City. This plan is solo on the list because it comes out of nowhere and isn't connected at all to her main goals and motivation during the season, which is like very connected to Mon-El and Supergirl's motivation and hatred for Kryptonians and everything. This, take over the Earth and create a New Daxamon National City, it's definitely not very connected to that. It also doesn't help that it's a very generic master plan for an alien invasion, and also, they already did an alien invasion earlier in, not this season of Supergirl, but this season of the Arrowverse in Invasion, and that definitely didn't help its case.
Its power comes from her.
Can't smash that to little bits, huh?
This is not what Astor wanted. Please, don't kill everyone.
Your aunt wanted to save this planet. The humans' extinction will do just that.
Non's main motivation was to basically just kill all human beings using something called Myriad, which he activates for a little bit, but he never succeeds to kill anyone. This is definitely a very boring plan, just to kill everybody on the planet. It doesn't really fit his motivation or his character very well at all. It doesn't really make very sense. I don't think it's as bad as RHEA or RHEA's non-existent plan, but I still think that Supergirl plans overall not very good for their main villains. That is until Lex Luthor.
Nick.
What did you do?
I'm giving you a second chance. Before it's too late for both of us.
I don't need bombs to kill you.
Amiko's plan in the end of the season was to destroy a couple buildings in Star City, which is the basic master plan for a main villain of Arrow, and this is, I think, the only season where that plan really doesn't work for the actual main villain. I think Amiko was a huge waste of a villain. Her master plan could have been a huge personal thing with Oliver because she is his half-sister, something to do with Robert or something, and they just didn't do that at all. They just fell back to the destroy Star City. Because of that, she is the lowest out of all the Arrow villains, and also very low on the list.
Don't worry, folks, the witch won't get far, not as long as everyone downloads the Eyes app. Share your sightings, we'll find the witch. It's only a matter of time.
Neuron's plan was to use an app he created to create a lot of fear, which would power him up. Using the magical creatures which he unveiled to the planet, and now everyone's scared of him, he would be powered up with all this fear. It's actually pretty original in terms of being a plan. I don't mind it at all. It's just that I hate how it's connected to the magical creatures. I hated those guys. I hated them as villains of the week. I hated them even more as plot devices for the end of the season, so I think that Neuron is definitely lower on the list because of that, or at least, I mean, his master plan.
Druce's men have taken your ship. Your friends are under arrest, and you are once again my prisoner. This time I don't plan to lose you.
Vandal Savage's main motivation throughout the season was to kill Hawkman and Hawkgirl so he can continue his immortality, and also to rule the world, which he does in the future. His plan at the end is to place himself in positions of power throughout the timeline, throughout history, which I think it kind of makes sense. Like, it definitely connects to the themes of the season and the concepts of the show in general, and in terms of the fact that he's ruling the world in the future, I just think that it's definitely very forgettable for a master plan. I struggled remembering what his master plan was.
Barry.
You lose, Barry.
Savitar's main plan throughout the season and all the way up till basically the first scene of the last episode was to kill Iris near the end of the season in order to lead Barry down a dark path that creates basically just himself. Barry would create a bunch of time remnants to fight Savitar. One of those time remnants wouldn't die and become Savitar, which is basically a time loop. It's much of a paradox, which I don't really mind at all. I think it's definitely not a bad plan. It makes sense for the season, although I don't really understand the time loop part. Anyway, he gets a new plan after that, and this is why he's a little bit lower on the list, because his new plan after he fails to kill Iris, which I don't understand why he just doesn't kill Iris, because like again, I don't know what's stopping him. Anyway, now his plan is to spread himself throughout time, which makes no sense, comes out of nowhere, and is why he's a little bit lower on the list.
That's it.
Damien Darhk's plan was to destroy the world in a nuclear Armageddon, except for a small part of it, which he calls the Ark, which would only have a selected group of people, which would be his new world. It's a very generic plan, very, very generic master plan. It's basically the same thing that Apocalypse was doing in X-Men Apocalypse, only Damien Darhk did it first. Still, though, it's definitely a very, very generic plan, and because of that, it's definitely nowhere near the top of the list, but I think that it works at least a little bit. It became a cliche and generic plan because they did it a lot, because it definitely worked, especially like for the stakes of it all. I'm not going to say that it's the best plan on Arrow. In fact, it's the second worst, but I still think it's better than all of the master plans below it.
It's just not enough.
You don't want a partnership. You want a controlling stake.
Guilty.
Diaz's master plan was to take control of Star City, which he kind of manages to do. The reason I don't really like it that much, or the reason, although it is near the middle of the list, I still don't like this plan that much, is because, although the plan's fine, the way they execute it in the season is really bad. He doesn't, like, take control of some sort of position politically, he doesn't outmaneuver anybody, he doesn't use any intelligence at all, it makes it pretty boring. On top of that, he uses 100% force, which makes it feel like Star City is incredibly vulnerable to anybody, because Diaz isn't really that good of a fighter as much as we've seen. He's not really good at weaponry as much as we've seen. He's really just killing people because they're letting him kill them, which it makes it all very, very boring. It still is nowhere near the bottom of the list because I think it's definitely a more original master plan than a lot of others, and I don't think it's terrible at all. I just really don't like the execution of Ricardo Diaz and how he took control of Star City. Both Cicada's goals throughout the season was to kill a lot of metahumans, as many as they can get their hands on, so it makes sense that their master plan at the end was to release a metahuman killing virus in Central City, killing basically all of the metahumans in the city. And although when I say they, I mean Cicada, basically just Grace Gibbons, which is fine. I mean, it's definitely a pretty good master plan that really fits the villain. That being said, this episode, the finale, was so overshadowed by the secondary main villain's master plan, Reverse Flash, which, if I counted him for this list, which I'm not going to, would be probably number 1, or maybe like number 1, 2, or 3, because it works so well and it's really well thought out. Cicada's, on the other hand, is pretty boring. It definitely fits the motivation, but it's definitely very, very boring, making it basically in the middle of the list.
What did you dream of?
Rebirth as RHEA Ghul.
There is no greater burden than the one you're about to take on, the annihilation of one's home.
It is necessary to complete my ascension.
RHEA Ghul's master plan was to release the Omega virus onto Starling City in order to, one, complete the ceremony of inauguration of Oliver Queen as the new RHEA Ghul, but his ulterior motive was to kill his main rival, Damien Darhk, the main villain of Arrow Season 4, which I think it's a master plan that definitely works for the season. I think that although it comes a little bit out of nowhere, and they probably should have mentioned it earlier, that the inauguration of the ceremony of the new RHEA Ghul included this, and maybe Oliver doesn't know until the end. Still, though, I think it definitely works for the season plot, which is a plot I don't really like. It's definitely a master plan that works just a little bit. I don't love it very much. Master plans in general for the main villains, I think, are not very good, which is why Ra's al Ghul, although being number 10, still not one that I love, although we are starting to get closer into the main villain plans that I definitely really like.
Finally, I am free.
Mullis's main plan throughout the season, and basically up until the last episode, was to break time and destroy the timeline, essentially, in order to escape from his time prison, in order to destroy that time prison. After that, he didn't really have much of a plan. He was just there as a threat for the Legends to fight. But still, I think that Mullis's plan definitely was well developed throughout the season, and I think that it led to a satisfying conclusion in the second to last episode, where he was actually released.
God saw. Namaskar.
The Vo's plan was to make everybody on Earth stupid so that he can quote-unquote enlighten them. When he says enlighten, he means to teach them a new way of living, a new peaceful but also less human way that he thinks would be more beneficial for the human race, which I think is a plan that really works for the character. And although his technophobia, it kind of comes out of nowhere near the end of the season, they probably should have established it earlier. That was his main motivation for doing this, his technophobia, the fact that he really hates technology and what it's done to the human race. I think all of that, except for how late it was established, it definitely really works for the character. And his argument in the second to last episode with Barry, I think that really convinces me as an audience member to put Clifford DeVoe a little bit higher on this list than really most of the main villains. But still, I don't think it's an amazing plan. I think it's just pretty good.
Measure his success by counting the number of victims he had, but now he was going to measure it by counting the number of Earths he conquered instead.
He doesn't want to just destroy Earth, too. He wants to take out every other planet in the multiverse.
How many are there?
Infinite.
Zoom's main motivation was that he wanted to know that he was the fastest speedster in the entire multiverse, so he stole Barry's speed, and now he wants to destroy the entirety of the multiverse so he knows definitively that he is the fastest. Although the actual destroying the multiverse part does come a little bit out of nowhere, I still think it works for the season and the main villain, and it really fits his motivation. I still don't think this is an amazing master plan. Like I said, destroying the multiverse kind of comes out of nowhere, but I think it really works, which is why it is number 7 on the list. I just think it's pretty good. It's definitely not great though, but starting with 6 to 1, we do get the great master plans. The Legion of Doom's master plan was to bring together the Spear of Destiny, which they do, and use it to reshape reality. The reason I think this really works is because I really like it when the villains succeed in their master plans, which they technically do, and because of some prideful thing or because of some cocky thing, because they did keep the Legends alive, they fail in the end. I actually really like how they do that in like especially seasons like this, but I also really like how their main motivations really fit their characters and how they failed in their respective seasons that they were the main villains of Arrow and the Flash. Merlin wanted to change the fact that Tommy was dead and that Thea hated him. Damien Dark wanted to change the fact that he's destined to fail in the future, and Thawne wanted to change the fact that he was erased from existence, and the Black Flash is trying to kill him. I think it really works for the season. I think it really works for the characters. I think they developed it pretty well, and in the end, it makes for a very entertaining master plan and a very entertaining final couple episodes of the season.
Maybe I'll be merciful enough to let you live and see your city burn!
Starting off the top 5, we have Slade Wilson. His master plan sounds pretty generic. Destroy everything Oliver loves, meaning his family, his loved ones, and his city. It sounds pretty generic, but that's only because they did it before over the course of this show with Merlin and Slade and kind of Ra's al Ghul as well. A couple other villains. They did this exact plot, but the reason it's generic, the reason they kept on doing it over and over again, because it worked, but I think it only works when the rivalry between the main hero and the main villain is as good as this. The rivalry and the backstory and the development between these two, it was so good in the season that the hatred between Slade and Oliver and the rivalry, and the fact that Slade wanted to destroy everything Oliver loved, it really worked for the season. And the stakes of it all, the fact that Merlin succeeded and now Slade is even more powerful than him, the stakes of it all were really there. I think it was possible that Slade would have succeeded, and he actually did at least a little bit in killing Moira. So I think that his master plan near the end, it really works, and I think it's just a great master plan that makes it into the top 5.
You need to focus on where you want to go. So think about that night. Think about your mother.
Sounds bad, right, Slugger?
Thawne's master plan at the end of the season, and also the entirety of the season, was to use Barry to go back to the future, for Barry to create a wormhole so that he can go through and he could go back to his time and basically forget about everything, which I think is the ending to what is probably the greatest season-long storyline of the Arrowverse. It worked so well for the development of the character and the storyline and basically everything, so much so that it is at the top 4 of this list.
Felicity, there's another device. There's 2 of them.
Merlin's plan was to destroy the Glades using the earthquake machine, which he succeeded in doing so. I think it works so well for the development of the character and the storyline and the ending of the season. The fact that it was a plan 5 years in the making and he actually succeeded, it's pretty satisfying for a person you're supposed to hate, which obviously you do because he's the main villain. You don't want him to succeed. The fact that he does in the end is pretty satisfying for the season. I don't know why. I really like it when villains succeed, and Merlin did so 100%. Other than the fact that that Tommy died, which he really couldn't have seen coming, and the fact that he technically died, although he actually didn't, which is why I think that I like this plan so much. On top of that, it fits his motivation so well. The motivation they developed throughout the season and they established near the end of the season, which I think worked really well for how the season went, and especially the acting from John Barrowman. Because all of that, I think the master plan for Malcolm Merlin worked really well, and I really like master plans that, for one, they took like a lot of years to plan, like Thawne, like Merlin, like Slade as well, and plans that they succeed in, like Merlin, as well as the number 2 and 1 slot on this list. Both of them took years in the making of planning, as well as the fact that they did succeed.
No, Adrian!
Adrian Chase is basically tied for number 1. I put him at number 2 because so many people hated how I put Prometheus at number 1 so much, but still, Prometheus is basically tied for the number 1 spot. Adrian Chase's plan was to prove to Oliver that everything he touches dies. In order to prove this, he lures Oliver to Lian Yu, where basically the entirety of the Arrow cast, as well as some more, are there, where Adrian set up a dead man switch, which would blow up the island if Adrian would die. The best outcome would be if Oliver killed him, proving that Oliver is a killer, and also blowing everything up, including Oliver and William. And his B plan was to go to the boat, which I think is what he expected, because in the earlier episode he said, "See you on the boat," which I love that so much, that foreshadowing and that deliberate foreshadowing from Adrian Chase. And now they're both on the boat, so his B plan was to shoot himself in the head, which is a plan that he did think that he would have to do, blowing up the island, killing everybody that Oliver ever loved, proving that everything Oliver touches dies. I love this so much. It works so perfectly, and although Adrian Chase technically did fail and only killed Samantha, and that is it, I don't blame that on the episode. I blame that on the subsequent episode, season 6 premiere. This episode, Lian Yu, his master plan, the way they executed it, the way they developed it over the season, and what it led to, it worked so perfectly. It was a plan that was probably years and years in the making. We know he was training to fight Oliver for 4 years, so he's probably training or developing this plan for years as well. A plan that he did succeed in doing, and he succeeded in executing, and a plan that fit his motivations so well. Because of that, Adrian Chase's master plan is, although it's technically my favorite master plan in the Arrowverse, tied with number 1, it still is number 2 on this list.
The Cosnians invaded.
Your signal was late. I was supposed to lead the attack.
No, Krasnaya Dodge. You did exactly what you were meant to.
Lex Luthor's master plan was to create a war between the United States and Cosnia with his mass wealth and power and his influence on Cosnia, as well as the Supergirl of Cosnia, the Red Daughter. Use all of that to create a war so that he can stop the war and become a hero to the United States, also gaining a lot of power in the United States, becoming more powerful than the president himself because of his influence over the president. Now he has powers to just use nuclear bombs, and he wants to destroy Argo, the place that Superman is at, because he hates Superman so much. His rivalry with Superman is definitely very clear through these episodes, and that's basically his entire plan: create a war between the United States and Cosnia to stop that war, become a hero, and also gain a lot of power in the United States and kill Superman. The reason I love it so much is because not only is it very well written throughout the season, and the limited amount of episodes they got with Lex Luthor, they used it so well, and they really showcased his main two motivations from the comics, which one, becoming a hero to the public eye, or at least he wants the public eye to think he is a hero because he thinks himself a hero of what he's trying to do to kill all the Kryptonians. And also the other thing is that he hates Kryptonians. This master plan of his works so well. I think it's very well developed. Obviously, it took him a lot of years of planning, and he did succeed in the end. And also his motivations were so well showcased in this master plan. That's basically the main three things I would want from a master plan. Obviously not every time, but like the limited amount of times they can do that. Having the master plan be a couple years in the making, having him succeed, or her succeed, and also having it fit the motivation so incredibly well, that's what they 100% succeeded in with Adrian Chase and Lex Luthor, which is why these two are at the top of the list, tied for number 1, but Lex Luthor is the actual number 1 because I didn't really want to put Prometheus at number 1 on the list again, but still I think Lex Luthor is still deserving for the best master plan in the entirety of the Arrowverse, which is crazy because he is on Supergirl, and if you look at this list, the last 3 slots on this list are all from Supergirl, and so is the first one. So anyway, that is this video and this list. Let me know yours in the comments down below. What will you change about this list? What do you like about it? What do you not? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.